I'm Al Kresta. We're here in Grand Rapids all week at Acton University. It actually starts tomorrow. People are registering today, and we thought we would take our time here to meet with our good friend Dan Mattson. Dan is a member of the Courage Apostolate. He's featured in the documentary Desire of the Everlasting Hills, which if you haven't seen it, you must get it. Go to Courage, and they'll get you a copy of it. It's spectacular. It is the one thing on same-sex attraction that I think you can give to anybody, whether they're pro-homosexual or not, all right? You want to, it's one of those tools that it serves everybody. Dan's often invited to share his testimony with clergy, schools, parishes, and he focuses primarily on the freedom of the church and the freedom the church brings to the world to help us work through this cultural confusion about sexual identity. He blogs at letterstochristopher.wordpress.com. You're still doing that?
Yeah, from time to time.
Okay. Yeah. And you can also find his writings at Joyful Pilgrims. He's working on a book, which we're going to see next year, called Why I Don't Call Myself a Gay Christian. I obviously take an aim at a friend of ours. Why I Don't Call Myself a Gay Christian, One Man's Journey to Freedom. And Dan, it's great to have you here.
Al, great to have you back in Grand Rapids, my hometown.
Yeah. Well, Sally and I came here for a little anniversary celebration in March and went to the Grand Rapids Symphony, and I forgot that you're the trombonist there.
Yeah,
and so I watched you the whole night and didn't realize you were there on stage. So.
Well, that's our job. We just fade in the background and serve the music, Al. We work together. It's like the body of Christ, right?
Right. Well, let's start with Orlando, since this is what's dominated news and discussion. Let's talk about the place first, Pulse. Yeah. This quote gay nightclub. Now, I acknowledge that places like gay bars, nightclubs, have traditionally been safe places where homosexuals can gather without fear of being mocked, or where they can act out in various ways without public outrage. The president tried to make this place sound like it was Dead Poets Society or something. That people were showing up there for civic involvement and to read poetry and to sing. This place is I was looking at its own promotional material. It's basically elaborate, and it's really the dominant gay bar in the area. What do you know? You know anything about it?
You know, I in my life, I don't know anything about Pulse in particular, but in my past life, I never went to a gay bar here in Grand Rapids, but I went to Chicago, visited some friends there who were out and gay, and went to some gay clubs in Boys Town there, and I can understand when people say that this is a place where I feel like I belong. And the reason that comes into play is because here I'm with people who experience what I experience.
Yes.
And
there's a similar social background.
Right. And there's the fact of the matter is we're all attracted to the same sex. I do remember when I turned my back on the church, and one of the things I did, I went to Chicago, visited a friend, and we went to some gay bars, and walking around Boys Town, I felt this sense of I'm with my people. You know?
So there's a tribal connection.
There's a tribal connection there. But with the passage of time, the reason I haven't gone back to gay bars is a gay bar is really a very lonely place. It's a lonely place and that loneliness is drowned out by dancing and the idea of having a party. Well, we have to party because we've had such a hard life. Let's come in here and we're going to party. And what I found is it was sort of a masquerade that masqueraded a lot of pain. And that's why that's one of the reasons I decided, I'm not. These aren't my people.
Yeah.
This is not my community, in the sense that I don't want to go to a dance club and say this is what being gay is all about, that sort of thing. But that was one aspect of of my perspective on that, I find it a very lonely place.
Let me read just a description of it from the Orlando Weekly. 3 glitzy, throbbing rooms of club boys, twinks and twinks at heart. Impressive drag shows. The bar's dancers are usually gorgeous. Great lighting and sound, plus cabaret performers, drag acts, and erotic dancers. That doesn't sound like the town hall meeting.
Well, no, and the whole idea. What's going on there? It's glam. It's this masquerade, the twinks and twinkish. That's young guys, dance boys.
Yep.
There's a idolatry of youth, and if you're an old man, you're an old queen. You're going to be mocked out of the place, and so much of the gay community is rooted in body image.
Yeah.
How do you feel? I was reading some of the stories of the people, and I sit there and I'm moved by it. But also in those stories, I see signs of the wounds there.
Yeah.
And one of them said he could put makeup on better than anybody. Well, what man put makeup on?
Yeah.
It's a man who is really concerned that the only way I'm going to get affection from another man is if I look good.
See.
And that comes back to the film, Desire of the Everlasting Hills, where my friend Paul was an international model.
Yes.
And there's a line in there, he slept with thousands of men. And he said, I just went to the gay clubs so I could get affirmation from another man. And the way you get the affirmation is, do you get the attraction? Do you get the attention? And that's displaced desire for true attention from primarily the father or other men growing up.
Yeah.
And it becomes, it comes out sideways and in this wrong, distorted way that comes out of our wounds, and then we celebrate it as a lifestyle.
I would venture to say that what you just said has not been said on any cable network news show.
No.
Since this happened.
Absolutely not. Because that's, you have to look in the mirror and say, I'm broken in this particular way.
Yeah.
And where do we go?
Yeah.
Where did I go? I went to Jesus. I went to my Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
Because I can see clearly the wounds in my life that led to my same-sex attraction. And it was doubts about my own masculinity. And that gaze of the Father, you think about that moment.
The gaze of the Father. I like that phrase.
In the Gospel. When Jesus Christ is blessed by the Father, here is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. We had a talk at one of the Courage conferences about the importance of the blessing of the Father. And I'm telling you what, every single one of those men and women at that Courage Apostolate had tears in their eyes, because that's what we long for. We long for the blessing of the Father. And why do we see an increase in people coming out? Well, you can connect it in so many ways. Part of it's the curse of the fatherless society. The children, they don't have that father in their lives.
So, in a sense, let me say that, are you making a prediction here that diminished fatherhood in a society leads to an increase in same-sex attraction?
I think absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This brokenness. Now, of course, correlation doesn't equal causation.
Right.
Not everyone who has a wound with... We all have wounds from our father. But, But there's this such an importance of that blessing of the Father.
There seems to be a disproportionate number of father wounds among same-sex attracted men.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And even to the point where, I've got this book that it's kind of sums up autobiography and memoir of the homosexuals, and it's called Writing Desire. And there's this one fellow, he was in high school and seeking out a fellow who was the age of his father. And now, as a grown man, he's an advocate for cross-generational same-sex relationships, because he was looking for a father.
Wow.
It's just really tragic.
That becomes then a pretext for ebophilia or pedophilia.
Yeah.
Hold it there, Dan. We'll come back and continue. My guest, Daniel Mattson, lives here in the Midwest, has a career in the performing arts, and is a member of the Courage Apostolate. We're talking about Orlando. Good afternoon. I'm Al Kresta. With me, Dan Mattson, member of the Courage Apostolate. How do you describe yourself, Dan?
I am Dan Mattson, a man. And I describe myself. You know, you mentioned in the beginning that I do some clergy study days, and I was just out in Iowa last week. And this whole question of identity, this is the analogy that I use, and I shared it with the priest there. I say, so somebody, it's a big deal if you're find out you're attracted to the same sex. It certainly impacts your life.
Oh, yeah.
So you sit there and you say, what do I do with this? You wrestle with this. That's what I did my whole life. Now, those attractions aren't a choice.
Right.
But I'll tell you, everyone chooses, let me be very clear here, they don't choose the attractions, but every single person chooses to be gay. That's a conscious choice. Now, I want to be clear to the audience, I'm not conflating that anybody chooses these attractions.
Right.
What I mean by that, once you choose to say I'm gay, and what do you hear? I'm finally celebrating who I am. This is who I am. I finally know who I am. Somebody comes out, and in fact, a lot of people were coming out yesterday on Twitter. As a result of Orlando, I'm coming out now. I finally know who I am, and then people I saw on Twitter, congratulations, we're glad you finally know who you are. Well, once you make that choice, I like to consider it. It doesn't become the center of the solar system. I like to use an analogy of the solar system. You're still a man, but it suddenly becomes like a double solar system with two suns. Right? Okay. So everything now, I say, everything that orbits around me orbits around the fact that I'm a gay man. Now, I find the church's clarity and wisdom to say, no, you at the center of who you are a beloved son of God. That's who you are. Everything else orbits around that. I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, I'm a son, I'm a friend, I'm a trombone player. Yep. And I have same-sex attraction. Now that orbits around who I am, and it may at times be a gas giant. And the gravity of that gas giant pulls on everything else, but it doesn't shape what I'm not. Nothing in my life orbits around that. And I find that that's very liberating. It's who I am, and that's where the church comes in and says, I love you enough. Jesus, look at the gaze of Jesus. Look at the gaze of the Father. I will tell you who you are.
So the phrase homosexual person is not a good phrase.
I find that it's, I don't think so.
No, I don't either.
I don't think so.
It identifies, it takes one facet of a person's being and makes it central.
Yeah. And even there, an aspect of a person's being, I don't view homosexuality as a part of my being.
I like that.
It's a disturbance in my being.
Yes.
Along with the fact that I like to eat too many cookies.
Yes. Well, this is a case again. The world telling us that our loudest and our most urgent desires are our deepest desires.
Yeah,
not true.
Not true. Right. Not true. And that's where the gift of chastity comes in. And what this world needs is the vision of chastity. Chastity, like all its virtues, it allows us to see clearly. It's like I put my glasses on. I can see again. I can see the cloud, I can see a man and say, no, that is not where my fulfillment will reside.
Right.
Now, that doesn't deny the fact that, I will see a man and I'm attracted to him.
Sure.
I don't deny that. And I don't beat myself up for the fact that that's the case. But I also know, because of chastity, I know that will not lead to my fulfillment. Though it's a battle often. It's a difficult battle.
Let me ask you, how is that different than a heterosexual married man, or even an unmarried man, who feels attraction to of lovely woman.
Exactly. It's not different. I mean, it's
so I don't go around saying my identity is adulterer in my heart.
Right. It's
right.
Strange.
Yeah.
It's strange, you know, and I think that isn't that one of the great freedoms that Jesus Christ did when they took that woman and they were going to stone her.
Yeah.
Well, what did God do? What did Jesus do?
Yeah.
You who are without sin cast the first stone. Now go and sin no more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And no, you are not an adulterer.
Yeah.
You are our Heavenly Father's daughter.
Right.
And I came to save you and rescue you. And I see you as you truly are. Come and follow me.
Right.
And what does it mean to come and follow Jesus? To live the perfect human life.
Yeah.
To live always guided by the gaze of the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And to make all your decisions based on that. With the wisdom. And in our fallen state, we need the virtues. The virtues and the commandments of God point us to where we would naturally go if we truly knew who we were.
Yeah. It's important to keep that in mind because these are not just rules.
No.
These are signposts moving us to who we are to be.
Absolutely.
Right.
I use the analogy of my rescue dog, Sophie, who when I talk to high school kids, I tell them my dog Sophie makes Doug the dog from Up look like an amateur when it comes to a squirrel, and she runs away from me if she gets a chance. She can escape from most dog parks. Well, she ran away from me because she thought her freedom was at the other end of the street, and I didn't see her for 3 days during a torrential downpour. I got a call from the animal control shelter. It said, your dog, she got hit by a car.
Oh.
She's fine.
Okay.
She's fine. She has not slowed her down at all. But she broke her pelvis. I took her to the vet, and she's got kind of a janky front leg from it that reminds her. But God said to me, the reason you have Sophie is because you've been Sophie your whole life. and you don't know that the fence of the dog park or the leash is there for your flourishing.
That's right.
And it's really, God says no because he loves us. And I came back to the Catholic Church in 2010 because of the Church's teaching on homosexuality. And I picked St. Clement of Alexandria as my patron saint for one of the reasons, because he said this. He says, the commandments of God lead to the blessed life. And I bucked against those commandments.
Yeah.
I went to gay clubs.
Yeah.
I had hookups with guys.
Yeah.
I thought, freedom, this sexual revolution, this is freedom and liberty. No, freedom is freedom to live out the way you're intended to live.
There's something ironic about this. All my adult life, I've been watching the culture keep pushing against Christianity and traditional morality, always saying, we need to be emancipated. We need liberation. We need to be free. Here I am now. It's 2016, right?
Right.
65 years later, after I was born, and they're still saying the same thing. What are you looking to be freed from now?
Right.
What's the next boundary that you think? What do you think is now? It's transgenderism. That's the brand new civil rights movement, right? So all of a sudden the culture accepts that. What's going to be the next thing that is going to be pointed to as we've got to get through this if we really want to be free? To me, there's a demonic quality to this.
There really is.
It's a beckoning, a seduction, a lie, which says, keep coming closer, you'll be freer. Of course, what happens is the person beckoning you keeps moving back.
Yeah.
And you step forward, until finally you're off the cliff.
And what happens? Pain ensues.
Yeah.
Especially with the transgenderism, the suicide rates are so much higher than the general population.
Yeah, I know.
And it's tragic.
Even after surgery.
Even after surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just tragic.
Before we came on air today, you mentioned something you had received from a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Is that a letter or email?
Yeah, I got it. My blog is out there, and people contact me.
Yeah.
And it's a part of my ministry. I can reach out to them. But yeah, it was from this 17-year-old young man living with the same-sex attraction, and I'll sum up what it ended up He reached out to me, and he said he's struggling with his family, he's struggling with his father, and then he ended the email this way. He said, "I hate everything. I hate myself. I just want someone to talk to. Can you please be my friend, or maybe my father?"
That is so painful to hear that.
Yeah, I got this in early May. From this poor young man.
17.
17, he told me. And I don't know where he lives, where he is in the country, but this is the cry of a lot of people's hearts. And to say that there is not a cause and effect, or that homosexuality and same-sex attraction is not directly connected to wounds that injured our psychosexual development, is to bury our heads in the sand and to not really help people.
Yeah.
And if the church goes there and says, "We are here, we are the field hospital for the wounded, we know how to heal you. Come to Jesus, get the gaze, the blessing of the Father." If we say that, we're shouted out of the public square.
I know. It's misunderstood. A lot of reasons. It's misunderstood, first of all, by those who don't want to understand because they simply believe they're autonomous and make up their own law in their own life, so they don't want to hear it. It's misunderstood by people who think we're making a psychological or clinical statement, when what we're talking about is a much deeper spiritual and anthropological statement, that the gaze of the Father in the gaze of the Father, you find your true identity.
That's right.
And this is not, strictly speaking, a clinical matter.
We're given our identity by God.
Yes.
You know, we don't define who we are. All right.
Right.
At all. We are already defined.
Yeah.
And I do find, it's very powerful. If we look at creation, God spoke. The Logos, Pope Benedict called the Logos creative reason, the wisdom of God. And then all of the creation story is separation through distinction, and then naming things by the right name.
Yes.
And then Adam sees all the animals, and he names them. Well, he names them what they would have been named because he saw with the eyes of God.
Yes.
He didn't just make it up.
Right.
He saw with the eyes of God. So God gave him the power of naming. And then what's the first thing he names? The first recorded words of men? Male, she shall be called woman. Words of sexual identity.
Interesting. Hold it there. We'll come back. Dan Mattson, my guest, starting out talking about the tragedy, the disaster, the murder in Orlando, but trying to understand this as Catholics. I'm Al Kresta. Good afternoon. I'm Al Kresta. With me, Dan Mattson, member of the Courage Apostolate, featured in the documentary Desire of the Everlasting Hills. Dan's frequently asked to share his testimony with schools, parishes, and focusing on his identity as a Catholic who struggled with same-sex attraction, is committed to a life of chastity, and who finds his identity in Christ. We're talking about the 17-year-old, and I find that just so troubling, and I know that there's that kind of pain out there.
Yeah.
In your experience, and maybe you and Paul have talked about this, Paul Darrow, in your wide familiarity and intimate relationships with same-sex attracted men, do you know anyone who wasn't that you would be able to say that I don't see any connection between their same-sex desire and their woundedness?
No. I mean, what I would find is people who deny that.
Yes.
Yeah, I would find people who deny it and very vociferously will deny it.
Right.
But if you really, Paul Monette wrote he got a National Book Award for a book that he wrote on his I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was a memoir about, I think, half a life story. But he's writing about his struggle with his own, coming to terms with his same-sex attraction. And yet, in the book, he writes about his time in high school where he envied the other boys. And he said, somehow I managed to feel scrawny and pudgy all at the same time.
Wow.
And I was surrounded by these Adonis-like men. And I wanted them. And at the end of the day, who was he sexually attracted to? He was sexually attracted to the men that he felt emblazoned this masculinity that he felt lacking in himself. And that is one of the fundamental wounds. And that's where the role of the father can come into play to embrace and really baptize a young man's masculinity and his sense of his male identity. And people want to say, oh, well, I had a wonderful relationship. I was on the sports team, Well, there are a lot of wounds. It could be from a father or And for me, I sit there too, just rejection from girls. I had attractions to girls growing up, but I was always the friend, never the boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And I asked a girl to the prom, senior year in high school, and I was successful with music. She was a musician as well. I thought, well, maybe I'll have a chance because
sure.
I'm pretty good. And well, she said, well, I heard John's going to ask me out. Well, of course she went with John, and John was the captain of the wrestling team. And it just confirmed everything I thought about myself, that I am not desirable to women. And that it turned that sort of attraction towards the guys who I thought would be desirable. I can see it as clear as day, like a furrowed plow through my life.
Yeah.
And John Paul II, in Love and Responsibility, he says, in the course of normal events, a boy will grow to have an attraction towards a woman.
Sure.
And I just saw that with my nephew. He just got married a week or two ago. And, growing up, he was just hunting and, doing all these things, welding things on his car. Are you ever going to be interested? And then suddenly this beautiful, wonderful woman came, and it totally changed his life.
Yeah.
And he's married now, and he is healthy in his psychosexual development. As healthy as we can be on this side of him.
Yeah.
And I can also, the problem here, probably some people out there are saying, oh, I've got a son who's got same-sex attraction. Is it my fault I'm his dad?
Yeah, that's
that's
inevitable.
That's not what I'm. I look at I've got 3 brothers. Well, 2 of them are married. One of them's a priest. Father Steve.
Yep. In fact, we're going in the footsteps of St. Paul.
That's right.
October 27th.
Right. But it's so there's so many situations too, in my life that are different than my brother's. So I don't blame my parents. I don't blame my father.
Right.
But I can see some wounds that I had with my father that did contribute.
Yeah.
But there's many, many paths to that woundedness. But to answer your question, yes. And this is where the church can come in and give. And I really think that's it. It's the gaze of the Father. That's what men need. And women, too. The gaze of the Father. You're my beloved daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And women can look to Mary. And men, I find St. Joseph inspirational for me.
Mm-hmm.
The chaste spouse of Mary.
Yeah.
He's an inspiration to me. And that's really what I get to see in the Courage Apostolate. When I get an email from this guy, it breaks my heart. Well, what is sexuality directed towards? Fatherhood or motherhood? Well, I have there are people who reach out to me, and I can be some sort of spiritual father to them. I can invest in their life, and hopefully help guide them through this.
I'm wondering about this. caught a few minutes. We came to the hotel last night. I flipped on television, and the movie Intern was on, starring Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro. De Niro's retired, but comes back to service her intern as she's building this high-tech company. And it's cute. It's a cute movie. But she mentioned something there, because the men in her company are not your classic old-style alpha males.
Sure.
They're rather effete. De Niro is of the older style, the more traditional male. But she has this little discourse, not too profound, but curious, where she says, we've done a lot to bring Go Girl, and we've given women a lot of attention over this last generation. What's happened to the guys? How come they're not like you? Because she's looking at these three younger men who don't really rank very high on the masculinity scale compared to De Niro, the older, wise guy.
Sure.
And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder how true that is. I mean, it's a funny story, so it's not a sociological study yet. But I'm wondering if the idea of growing up into being a man has changed, and there's the perpetuation of male adolescence until the late 20s now.
Yeah, I think that's true. And here's what's happened in some ways too. One part of it is that men who choose to be men and to be masculine, and I don't mean in some hyperbolic way, exaggerated way, but just having convictions and standing up for what's right.
Sure.
Have sort of been watered down, just sort of, well, you can't be brusque, you can't be that way, and if you really want to be progressive and open-minded, I would say it's one of the problems with feminism, to diminish the differences between the sexes. Men have been shamed for being manly, and the illumined, enlightened man is going to be really genteel and sensitive to the point where it's almost emasculated to the point of hardly having anything to do with what it means to be a man. And I'm not talking about brusque, like I said before. I mean, I'm a musician. I'm an artist. But what does it mean to be a man? To protect, to stand up for that which is right, to sacrifice yourself, to defend honor. And I do think one of the roles that the Catholic Church has to do in this confused day and age is particularly men. We need to stand up against this madness, particularly of transgenderism and gender ideology, and stand up for the truth and be at the forefront of what we're doing. I've thought about, Knights of Columbus. They do these wonderful billboards for right to life issues. I think the men of Knights of Columbus have to really get passionate about defending the goodness and beauty of what it means to be made male and female in the image and likeness of God.
We were talking about that earlier, that sexual differentiation is right there at the beginning of creation. It's the first naming that is actually listed.
It's powerful. The power of the Word. And St. John echoes that. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. And so we have to look at the power of the Word, the power of naming things. That is one role of a man. The power, God has granted us the role of naming things rightly, and seeing and judging things rightly, beholding and seeing rightly. That is a role that the Church has to do. It's part of our prophetic role in the world today. And using the right words, it's important.
There's a quote from Tertullian that you gave me earlier today. Could you have it right in front of you there?
Well, I've always liked, we're the salt of the earth.
Well, that's good too.
What does that mean? And here, Tertullian says, "For men of God are assuredly the salt of the earth. They preserve the order of the world." I really find that powerful. We preserve the order of the world. Well, where is the chaos happening?
Well, the power to define, that we used to say, is the power to control.
Yeah.
So, this is an old 1960s political phrase, but there's something metaphysical about that.
Yeah.
The power to define is the power to control.
Well, and where was the first propaganda? Where was the first lie told?
Yeah, I was going to say,
right?
in Eden.
In Eden.
Yeah.
And we lie about human sexuality now. It's propaganda, and it's been forced on us. And every time there are simple ways we can reclaim things. We have to reclaim reality. That's a new sexual revolution. Let's reclaim reality. We should speak about the sex of a child, not the gender of a child. What is the gender of the child you're expecting? No, let's say sex. Let's go back. It's male or female.
I'm not going to assign a gender to my child.
Right.
I've actually heard somebody say that.
It's nuts.
You don't assign it. It's there. Just take a look. So, all right. Hold on. We're back in just a minute. Dan Mattson, my guest. I'm Al Kresta. Good afternoon. I'm Al Kresta. Dan Mattson with me. We were talking Courage has a conference coming up in July in Washington, D.C.
Catholic University of America. If you live with same-sex attraction or you have a loved one who lives with same-sex attraction, consider yourself invited to the Courage Conference. It's a great gift to the church, great gift to you. There's hope and peace and joy, and we're going to be there at Catholic University of America. I believe it's July 21st to the 24th. Somewhere around there. You could go check that out, couragerc.org. And the film that I'm in can be seen at everlastinghills.org. And we just hit a major milestone of 100,000 views.
Oh, everlastinghills.org. Do see this. I know we're all looking for good tools to help communicate the faith. And what I love about Desire of the Everlasting Hills is that it doesn't preach at all. It tells the story of these three lives and does so in such a winsome and compelling way that you can hand this out in a DVD for even people who've rejected church teaching. They will not know what to do with these testimony stories. It's really a great piece of work. So Courage again, July,
third week of July, I think Thursday through Sunday.
Okay, Washington D.C. Go to couragerc.org. Well, let me thank you so much again. Great being with you, Dan.
So great being here. Thanks, Al.
And I'm Al Kresta. You're able to join us daily here, 4 to 6 Eastern Time on Kresta in the afternoon. I do urge you to follow up on any of our guests by going to AveMariaRadio.net. You can see in the store, you'll also see the Islam and Religion of Peace debate series that took place before 700 people at Eastern Michigan University. Robert Spencer, really the star of that event. And I'll see you tomorrow.
Kresta in the Afternoon is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. The executive producer is Nick Tom. To follow up on any of the guests or information presented on today's program, visit the Kresta Guest Archive at AveMariaRadio.net. That's AVEMARIA Radio.net. To listen to this or any other edition of Kresta in the Afternoon, visit the audio archives at AveMariaRadio.net. Or to order a CD of the program, call 734-930-4506 or email orders at AveMariaRadio.net. That's 734-930-4506 or orders at AveMariaRadio.net.